You want to be in a galaxy where Star Trek isn't lame. You want to go where everybody knows your name.
Hey guys, Michael J. Crawford, the Anti-Trekker here, and I just finished watching Star Trek Discovery Season 3, Episode 6, Scavengers. And I'm a little torn on this episode, I'll be honest. And it's kind of something that I was suspicious of. I mentioned it on a couple of live streams prior to watching this episode, and watching the episode, it definitely confirms what I was thinking, which is that if this were, in fact, the 4th episode of this season, I'd be having a very different feeling about this season thus far. You see, if we look at Episode 1 and Episode 2, and they feel like an interesting new take on Star Trek, where they're stuck in this mysterious future. There are a lot of problems they have to deal with, and definitely more cinematic style, and slightly less Burnham-centric, all of which I thought was a big positive. But then in Episode 3, 4, and 5, it felt like the same old Discovery, and in fact it felt like they were undermining themselves with many of their creative choices. Now with Episode 6, the interesting thing here is that it does feel more in keeping with Episode 1 and 2, which is definitely a good thing. However, it is also painfully Burnham-centric, which is not a good thing. And it seems like the reason I said that this should be Episode 4 as opposed to Episode 3 is it does feel like there is a missing third episode to explain some of the things that are referenced in this episode that were never referenced before, but now are just kind of common knowledge. And this is a problem they've had in prior seasons of Discovery as well, where they suddenly pick up a plot line like it was in the first draft and then it was removed, but everybody forgot to remove it from the later episodes. So, the first MacGuffin of this episode is that Burnham is on a quest to retrieve a black box from a destroyed starship. That apparently there are all these black boxes, that every starship has a black box. Again, this is interesting because it seems that the writers of Discovery, while Star Trek has always been based on the Navy, the writers of Discovery seem to want to base Discovery on the Air Force, and so they're making it like an airplane's black box, a flight recorder that actually records everything that takes place on the ship. Now, I don't have a problem with that per se, because they did establish in other Trek episodes that they use the automatic recordings on a starship sometimes to investigate things that go on. That happens all the way back to the original series. So these black boxes' existence, I don't really have a problem with, but the fact that they're acting like, I mean, when Burnham first meets up with Book, he's like, oh yeah, I got one of them black boxes you wanted.
I was on my way to the Bajoran exchange when this guy sitting next to me started talking about a black box. And I think his black box is one of the ones you're looking for.
Wait a minute, what? What do you mean one of those black boxes? Am I missing something? Was there a line of dialogue that was cut out? Black boxes? Now maybe if I go back and rewatch Episode 1 or 2, there is a mention of the black boxes. I don't know. But it feels like if it's that important to the story, it should have been forefront from the beginning. The next thing that really threw me for a loop is when Burnham and Georgiou, they go rogue, they take Book's ship in order to try and track down Book, who's gone missing, and they go against Saru and the Chief of Starfleet's direct orders, hijack Book's ship, and go on this rogue mission. And when they get to where they're going, which is a planet controlled by Orions and Andorians, they decide to try to barter their way in by offering, and I quote, real
How soon before your boss finds out I have real dilithium on board I am willing to part with, and you're making me hover like a peasant?
Hang on. Real dilithium.
Because now this is the first establishment that, yes, maybe in the burn all dilithium was wiped out, because that's been something driving people crazy. Wait a minute, there's been no reference to synthetic dilithium or any type of substitute for dilithium, and yet all these ships are running around on warp drive. There is dilithium out there because Burnham has been doing her whole courier thing to get dilithium in episode 1 and 2. So how could you get dilithium if all dilithium went inert? So when they start talking about real dilithium in this episode, they make it out that, okay, all dilithium may well have been wiped out. But the problem is that flies in the face of everything we've seen in the last 5 episodes. So again, it feels like episode 1 and 2 had an idea going, 3, 4, and 5 completely forgot about it, and 6 just kind of picked up with a few new things that we were missing from this mysterious episode 4 that never happened. Now let's talk about the writing for just a second. We are back to there is some seriously cringeworthy writing. Now, I've accused this show of being written by people who should not be writing science fiction, rather writing something like Gilmore Girls. And this is a perfect example of that in the references to Stamets being the bomb, and Stamets then, when talking about Tall, saying that he doesn't like taking care of tweens.
You can accomplish things none of us can even imagine. Including me, and I've imagined more than most.
You're kind of like the bomb, huh?
She trusted me today.
And that's bad. Why?
Because I've never had time to be a tween's confidant.
These types of contemporary uses of language do not belong in Trek. And yes, we do have Tilly also cursing in this episode, which she's done a couple of times before, and that's annoying in and of itself. But all this writing shows me is that these people have no idea, the writers of the show have no idea how to write science fiction. They're writing it as if it's a teen drama. And that's really a problem. Now, when they get back, when Burnham and Georgiou get back from their mission, and keep in mind, Burnham literally disobeys orders, steals a ship, and goes off on her own with a homicidal, genocidal maniac from another universe. And they go off on this mission, they come back. And by the way, once again, we keep getting told how Burnham has changed so much. Well, I'll give him this much. In this episode, she is changed a bit because she's completely irrational and stupid. Because she's doing things that make no sense. And in fact, Georgiou has changed more than any other character, because when they're getting ready to go on this mission, she warns her, you realize that what we are about to do is to undermine Saru's authority as captain of Discovery right under the nose of the chief of Starfleet at the time that Saru is trying to prove to said chief of Starfleet that Discovery is legit. And she doesn't care because, oh, she loves Book, but she doesn't love Book. But surprise, surprise, at the end of this episode, she loves Book. And I mean, the unveiling that she and Book actually do have romantic feelings for each other was about the best kept secret in Trek since.
My name is Khan.
So, they go on this rogue mission, they come back, and of course the Admiral dresses down Burnham to an extent. And basically, because the Admiral is a man, we don't want him to actually dress down Burnham. So instead, he has Burnham dress down herself. Nope, not even making that up. He has Burnham say what she did wrong.
Commander Burnham, why don't you tell me what I'm about to say?
The source of the burn is not an issue that you have the luxury of pursuing, because every day you have 100 fires you have to put out. And I disobeyed a direct order and undermined my captain's authority and yours.
And so his punishment is nothing. Nothing. He does nothing. He just says, okay, well, it's up to you, Saru. Do what you want. God, I hate this show. All right, so then we get to another stupid line, and this is something that's said a couple of times by Burnham in this episode, but after they get back from this mission, her pleading with the Chief of Starfleet is that
until we solve the mystery of how it happened and why, I believe the Federation will never be, can never be, brought back together again.
Until we figure out what caused the burn, the Federation can never be brought together again. Why? Why is the mystery of what caused the burn preventing the Federation from coming back together? Look, undoing the burn might make it so that the Federation can come back together. But figuring out what caused it is not going to bring back the Federation unless she happens to know already what caused it, and she knows that the revelation of that is going to suddenly make everybody unite against some new villain or something. Which, who knows, that may be the case, it may not. Since this show's premise seems to just be that Michael Burnham is awesome and Michael Burnham is always right even when she's wrong, that's probably the case. They'll probably figure out what caused the burn, and all of a sudden, everybody's going to want to work together again. Which makes no freaking sense whatsoever. But that just seems to be the way they want to do things on this show. Then, then Chief of Starfleet leaves Michael Burnham's fate in Saru's hands. And the first thing Saru says is that they both made mistakes.
I am sorry.
The Admiral made some excellent points, and I will continue to reflect on the way I have handled all this. We both made mistakes.
No. Burnham disobeyed orders and went on a rogue mission with a genocidal, homicidal maniac. Saru did not make mistakes. Burnham made an error in judgment. Burnham was insubordinate. Burnham should be locked up again. But instead, Saru's punishment to Burnham is that she is no longer the first officer. But she is still the chief science officer on Discovery. She should be in irons. She hijacked a ship, she disobeyed direct orders from the Chief of Starfleet, and her punishment is, well, you can't be my number one. And by the way, I'm really sick of them calling the first officer their number one. Look, number one, yes, is a nickname commonly given to executive officers. And you know, it was used at least twice in canonical Trek with number one, the actual character from The Cage, as well as, of course, Riker. But Riker was also known as the first officer or the executive officer or Commander Riker. Not the job is not my number one. The job is first officer or executive officer. Number one is an informal way of saying that. And yet, Saru and the Chief of Starfleet are always saying number one. They won't say first officer for some reason, which I don't know. I don't know. By the way, and this is Tal, of course, we already knew that they're trying to make this, you know, the way that they're going to try to defuse all the accusations that Michael Burnham is a Mary Sue is to make everybody a Mary Sue. So now, of course, everybody has fancy new comm badges which act as a communicator and tricorder and personal holographic interface. And they also all, so Tilly is now redesigning her interface, and she is running around the ship, controlling everything. She is the boss. She knows everything. She is on top of everything around the ship instead of being the flighty, scatterbrained person that is just trying to fit in that she was in season one. Now she's like the most competent officer in the fleet, because why not? And we can't have Tilly be the best, so instead we're going to make Tal the best. Hey, Tal, the 16-year-old who's not even a part of the crew, in this episode redesigns the spore drive. Now keep in mind, she'd never seen a spore drive before 2 episodes ago. But in one day, she rebuilds the whole thing so that Stamets has a more comfortable and better interface. I hate this show. So Tal is now not only they decide that Tal has got to be the best now at everything too. So we have Tal being the best, we have Tilly being the best, we of course have Michael Burnham being the best. Meanwhile, Saru takes the blame for the mistakes made in this episode. Oh, and of course, Book apologizes to Michael Burnham because, you know, she rescued him. So, yeah. You know, the sad thing about this is that had this been the 4th episode and the 3rd episode had picked up these plot threads that seemed to be in episode 6 but were missing from the last 5 episodes, this might be an interesting season. Even with them having Michael Burnham saving the day all the time, even with some of the stupidity of this show, it would be interesting enough. But they don't seem to know what the heck they're doing. And that sums up Star Trek Discovery. Take care.
You want to be in a galaxy where Star Trek isn't lame. You want to go where everybody knows your name.